Hello, friends, and welcome. It's Sarah Liz, and I'm back with some quick card, emergency card inspiration for you. If you're new to my channel, I release free sentiments on the first and third Friday of every month to help you stock your stash with cards that use interchangeable sentiments. But we're going to do something different today. I am using a stamp set and making sentiments that will fit on those cards just the same. So I am so excited. Not Too Shabby reached out and was like, do you want to do a Not Too Shabby collabby? And it's a watermelon theme. If you've been here, you know I'm obsessed with watermelon. And so they sent me the June paper pad club. There are 2 paper pads here. And then they also sent me the coordinating stamp set and coordinating ephemera set that you can add on to the paper pad club if you want. And I was like, of course, I'm going to use it all. So I am just putting 4 of those sentiments into my MISTI. Okay, and I'm going to stamp these just onto a piece of white cardstock. I'm actually not going to keep the sentiments I'm stamping right at this minute. Instead, what I'm going to do is use this as a template, and then I will reach for my 1 3/4 inch circle, and I will use like the negative like this, and I will place it around and then just tape it on there so I can pop in a bunch of circles and just bulk cut a bunch of those. Now, one of these I want to turn into tuck sentiments. So I am cutting 2 lines that are 7/8 of an inch apart, and then I'm going to sort of connect those with my trimmer. So I'm essentially doing the same thing, but I have to make this from scratch because I don't have a die that will cut the new tuck strip size for us. This one says, "Hi, sweetie," and I could have just done a rectangle, but you know how I've been loving our new sentiment size, so I will tape this one on there too. Now, in the top right corner, I've actually cut a 1 1/2 inch circle, and in the end, I will swap out the one in a melon and make that a 1 1/2 inch circle. So I have 2 slightly smaller ones. I have 2 that are our standard size circle and 1 that is that 7/8 of an inch. So the mat for that will be a 1 inch strip of cardstock. And I'm going to stamp in 2 separate colors. So I am just adding ink all over. I'm going to do all of them in red a couple of times, and then I'll clean them off, and I will do them all in black. If you don't do a lot of stamping, and honestly, guys, I don't do a lot of stamping, just know all red ink and a lot of pink ink is going to stain your stamps. It doesn't mean they're not clean. It just, for whatever reason, that photopolymer picks that up. But I cleaned them off as best I could, and then I'm coming in with my favorite black ink for sentiment stamps. This is VersaFine Clair Onyx Black ink. It's a pigment ink, but it dries pretty quickly, and it's a deep, dark, crisp black, and most of the time I only have to stamp it once, especially when I'm stamping a circle that has a tendency to rotate when I stick it into a jig like this. That is critical. So I stamped a whole bunch of sentiments, and that sets me up to make just a ton of cards. We're going to make 6 cards today, but I am going to give you a quick look at what we're using. So we have 2 paper pads that we'll go through in a minute. Here's the stamp set we just used, and there are 5 different sentiments, so I stamped all of those. And then this one, I think this one's my favorite. This summer slice, there are, I think, like 4 of each design. The paper is super thick. The colors are so bright and vibrant. And then we do have some ephemera on there as well. And then this one is a little bit more subtle. It's got that sort of watercolory, almost vintagey look to it. And this coordinates particularly well with the ephemera pack. So again, tons of paper in here, lots that you can do with it. And then here's kind of the ephemera pack. I particularly love the dog with the watermelon. You know I love some books and watermelon. Tons and tons of really great options. All right, so for my first card, I actually started by pulling out the Kendra's Card Challenge sort of layouts for this quarter, and then I'm terrible at following directions. So this originally was from sketch number 1, I think. And then and then I just simplified it so much I don't think it even looks like the sketch anymore, but that's okay, right? You don't have to follow the sketch. Sometimes I just need a sketch to kind of get my brain working, get me thinking about, well, how do I want this card to work? What should that layout look like? And this worked really, really well. For the sentiment on this one, I'm using one of the smaller ones. It's 1 1/2 inches, and that red mat is 1 5/8. I have a set of 2 sets actually of circles that are those 1/8 of inches in between. Trinity has one, Waffle Flower has one. So if you look around, look for, sometimes they'll call them like set B, or they'll call them additional circles or something like that. I'll link what I can below. And I think that Not Too Shabby Shop carries a bunch of dies, so I'll check there too. And I ended up adding a second mat that is 1 3/4 of an inch. So if I wanted to use a standard emergency sentiment here, I would just pull off the whole mat. I put the mat on with removable adhesive because that way this card is more versatile for me. Then next, I am working on, again, sort of a variation on a Kendra's Card Challenge sketch that doesn't actually look like her sketch by the time I'm done. So this was sketch 3, and I started with sort of standard measurements, an A2 card panel, and then a 4x5 1/4. And then here, these actually do follow the sketch, but she's got some kind of like leafy thing and then a rectangle sentiment. So my pattern paper follows her sketch. It is 3x4 1/4, but then I wanted an 1/8 inch mat for this black layer, right? So it is, oh gosh, math, 3 and an 1/8 by 4 3/8. I like that teeny tiny little border, and that's going to match the border on our sentiment. So I cut a 1-inch strip of red cardstock, and then I'm just trimming this down. You can see the other card there. I was thinking at first that this was going to go on the other card, but it didn't fit. So I'm just going to stick my sentiment kind of down at the bottom, and I call these tuck strips because I like to leave that extra white on the left or on the right and then tuck it behind either another sentiment or some kind of ephemera. Here we have this like watermelon juice and then a watermelon cupcake. Can I tell you, I studied abroad when I was in high school in Costa Rica, and they made watermelon juice, and it was amazing. So I'm actually adding some removable adhesive when I add that tuck strip on there, so I can change that later if I need to. But there is card number 2. Now, these two cards get pretty close. This, again, is from Kendra's Card Challenge, and cards 15 through 18 all use 4 pieces from the same layout. If you're not familiar with Kendra's Card Challenge, I keep talking about it. Once a quarter, she releases this brilliant free printable. It's completely free. That lets you take, I think it's 6 pieces of 6x6 patterned paper and make 18 cards. And she gives you all the measurements to make just a single card, or all the measurements to cut your 6x6 and have like a no scrap situation with all your cards. And so I really loved this layout. Again, I'm sort of jumping off from her sketch and going to add to it and dress it up a little bit, but that's the fun of it. So she has her pattern paper. It's 1 sheet that gets cut twice diagonally, and you get 4 of those pieces. So I have one that I'm using the pink sort of watermelon side, and then the other where I'm going to use the more pattern paper side you can see on the back there. So it was 1 sheet of paper, but I'm essentially going to get 4 cards out of that. I took 1 A2 panel, and I am layering these pieces on there and then just eyeballing the sort of mats and layers on here and trimming away the other 2 sides. There are 2 right angles on the piece that you're left with, so it's pretty easy to get it started and then just to trim away the excess. I think Kendra's sketch doesn't give you a mat for that, but I like mats, and so please know it wasn't super hard. So again, I'm using those sort of 1/8 of inches when I'm cutting my pattern paper. So it's 4 1/8 by 5 3/8 for my big piece of pattern paper. And then that matches what this little piece is doing. And I can just line that right up in the corner. And you see how that pattern paper just pops a little bit. And again, this is that pattern paper that has the brighter colors. I'm a bright, bold color girl. And there are a few foods out there that I could eat indefinitely. Like if it was like the one food I ever got to eat for the rest of my life, it would probably be watermelon. And if it wasn't watermelon, it might be popcorn, which is a really lame answer. But come summertime, watermelon makes me so happy. And my father-in-law lives down the street and loves it almost as much as I do. And he's my watermelon fairy. He'll go to like Costco and get one of the huge ones, and then he'll cut the whole thing up and he will bring me cut watermelon, because that's the worst bit, right? Trying to cut that giant piece of fruit. Oh my goodness. But let's get back to it. This pattern paper I adore. I am using a 1¼ inch punch here and just punching out some of our small watermelons. And so it looks like we've got this little white mat on it as well. I am going to add a second mat because I was feeling kind of extra, but you wouldn't have to. Look how great those look. The white mat, again, helps those little images to pop. I don't have ephemera where the colors kind of match this brighter palette, so I cut little pieces out of the pattern paper to make my own ephemera. I am grabbing one of my tuck strip sentiments since we only had one of that kind that I could make from the stamp set. And I am just going to kind of put all my watermelons together. I used those sort of additional circles or B-layer circles here again. So if the watermelon pieces are 1¼ that circle is 1 3/8. So I get that teeny tiny little black mat, mostly because otherwise I was running out of room and they didn't fit. So I'm going to add one of those watermelons onto the extra white part of my sentiment, and then I'm going to evenly space them going up the left-hand side of that card. Normally, I add my sentiments with removable adhesive so I can change them out later if I need it for something else, but I can always use a birthday card, and I'm making 6 watermelon cards today. So I didn't worry too much about it on this one, and I just added everything on there with some black foam. And this card, you guys, it might be my favorite. Like, it's something about those circles. I'm going to move on to my next card. And at this point, I've been fully inspired by Kendra's card challenge, and I feel like I'm ready to just wing it, just cut some stuff and see if it works. So I have some red cardstock that is just an A2 panel. I cut my pattern paper at 4 by 5.5. So it goes all the way top to bottom, but I get that nice little strip on the side. And then I just have a bin of strips of cardstock. I have some like slimline strip dies that I've had forever. And I, for a long time, was just anytime I had a small scrap, I was cutting it into strips, sticking it in the bin. So I grabbed 2 of them. I forget about it for like months at a time. And then I'll start adding strips to everything. I think that particular strip is like 3/8 of an inch. But you know, whatever you have, a 1/4 inch would work fine. I have layered up a thicker piece of dark green cardstock with a thinner piece of lighter green cardstock, and I cut them at the same time to get the same angle. And then I flipped it so that that light green would go the other way. The 2 angles are going to be the same, but I'll hold them together and clip the other end. In this way, I have matching angles on both sides. Okay, I can flip it over one more time and cut off the green strip, and it would go all the way side to side. But what I did was to scoot it down about, I don't know, 1/4 inch, 1/2 inch to create an equal margin on the left and right hand sides. But it would be easiest probably to just leave it the same length as the darker green. And then I will tuck that behind my focal image. So the circles that I'm using, this sort of scallop circle, any scallop circle will do, right? But that's from the Emergency Card Essentials die sets that I designed specifically for sentiments of this size. And it has the 2-inch circle and a handful of other sizes, and it just makes making emergency cards really quick and easy. I think what I love most is that then if I'm using one of my smaller sentiments, I just add extra layers to my circles and it fits all the same. It just looks like a decorative element. So on this one, this is like card 6, guys. This went fast. This is like a bonus card. So I'm setting this one up to begin with, much the way we did the last one, but I was just looking at my scraps and playing around, and I realized that this watermelon is a repeating pattern, and the pink pattern matches the red pattern, as you do. And so this scrap fits beautifully right on top of the red one, and it looks seamless. So I cut just by hand 2 darker green strips to add onto the side. I think this just elevates it, and it lets everything look a little more polished. Plus, I had scraps on my desk, right? If I'm making 6 cards, by the time I am done, you guys, watch out. You're not even going to be able to make it to the door because I have just flung all of the things I'm done with onto the floor to put away later. So I have a little black mat that is ever so slightly larger than the pink piece. And then I'm just going to hold this over top of the card, and I want to cut away on the left so that the pink will butt right up against that dark green strip. And you can see how the pink seeds are lining up with the red seeds. So I am just marking that with my pencil, and I'll take it to my trimmer, and I'm going to have to try a couple of times. I'm afraid of cutting away too much, right? Once I go too far into that pink, there's no going back. So tiny little slivers at a time. My trimmer's old, y'all. Do you have to do this with your mini guillotine? Oh man, it's fine. Everyone survives pretty much every time. And then I will add a sentiment onto there when we're done. So a little wet glue gives me room to wiggle that into place. And then again, I have my 2-inch circle for my emergency sentiment. I have put on 5 of the 6 cards stamped sentiments from that coordinating stamp set. But again, most of those are on there with removable adhesive in case I need it for something else. This one says Hello Summer. Honestly, I'll probably give these to my mom because she loves watermelon, again, almost as much as I do, almost as much as my father-in-law. But my dad won't eat it. And so she cuts these watermelons and she has the whole thing to herself, and it's a lot. At least around here, I live in Nebraska, we get black diamond watermelons. If you've never heard of these, they are, I think, regional. But look for them. It is the sweetest, best seedless watermelon you've ever gotten. I have to buy them from like roadside stands. I can't get them necessarily in the grocery store. But they are so, so good. And if you ever get one that isn't perfect, you just tell them at the stand next time and they give you a free one. Every stand I've ever been to does that around here, and it is amazing. So I added one more of the sort of bee circle layers on there. I wanted that black outline too. And then I cut out ephemera from the pattern paper so I could step this up just a little bit. But that, you guys, is card number 6. Let's take a look at all 6 cards. Friends, I hope that this inspires you. I am obsessed with watermelon, but you can use these layouts with supplies that you already have. I hope this inspires you to get crafty, to get creative today. Thank you so much for spending your time with me, and I will see you next time.